It was a dark and stormy night as Sarah drove her Tesla through the desolate rural roads of Texas. The rain poured heavily, battering against the windshield of her car as she struggled to keep her vision clear. Despite the weather, she was determined to reach her destination, a remote cabin in the woods where she planned to spend the weekend alone. As she drove deeper into the heart of Texas, the roads became more treacherous and the countryside became more eerie. The trees swayed ominously in the wind, casting strange shadows across the road, and the only sound that could be heard was the incessant tapping of raindrops against her car. Suddenly, she heard a strange noise coming from the back of her car. At first, she ignored it, thinking it was just the rain, but the noise continued, growing louder and more insistent. She pulled over to the side of the road and got out to investigate, but when she opened the trunk, she found nothing out of the ordinary. Shrugging it off, Sarah got back into her car and continued driving, but the feeling of unease continued to grow inside her. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her, stalking her through the darkness. As she drove further, the road became more desolate, and she found herself driving through an old abandoned town. The buildings were dilapidated and the streets were empty, but Sarah felt as though she was being watched from every window and alleyway. Suddenly, she saw something in the distance that made her blood run cold. It was a figure standing in the middle of the road, its arms outstretched, as if waiting for her. Sarah slammed on the brakes, but it was too late. The figure collided with her car, shattering the windshield and sending her spinning off the road. When Sarah regained consciousness, she found herself lying on the ground, surrounded by darkness. She felt a sharp pain in her head and realized that she had been knocked unconscious in the crash. As she struggled to get to her feet, she realized that she was not alone. In the shadows, she could see the outline of a figure approaching her, its footsteps echoing ominously against the ground. Sarah tried to run, but her legs were weak, and she stumbled and fell. As the figure closed in, Sarah could see that it was a woman, with long tangled hair and a pale, ghostly complexion. The woman smiled at her, revealing a set of sharp, jagged teeth, and Sarah realized with horror that she was face to face with a ghost. But then, just as suddenly as it appeared, the ghostly figure disappeared, and Sarah found herself standing alone in the darkness. Confused and disoriented, she stumbled through the wilderness, looking for a way out. Eventually, she stumbled upon a cabin in the woods, and she realized with relief that she had finally reached her destination. But when she opened the door, she found something that made her blood run cold. Inside the cabin, she found a mirror, and when she looked into it, she saw that her own reflection was no longer there. Instead, she saw the ghostly figure that had been stalking her all along, smiling back at her with those sharp, jagged teeth. The twist was that Sarah had died in the crash, and the ghostly figure she had been seeing was actually her own ghost, haunting the countryside of Texas for all eternity.